Robert Jenkin, who is the CEO of CloudSigma, is going to talk to us about cloud service providers and blockchain technology and what Robert is seeing out in the market today with the technology. Robert?
Good afternoon, everyone. So I wanted to talk about how the cloud can drive mass adoption of blockchain. Because this, as you just heard, really the blockchain needs to become plumbing, needs to become something quite ubiquitous. And that would be a sort of measure of success. So I wanted to sort of talk about some of the ways that I see cloud and cloud service companies such as CloudSigma from in terms of driving that process forward. So just 2 minutes about ourselves, and then I'll go into that. We're a Swiss company, although I'm obviously English. We have a number of operational centers around the world, however, and we're about 50 people at the moment. We'll double actually in the next 12 to 18 months. And we're found about 2009, so relatively early in the cloud space. Personally, I'm also an enthusiast of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. I've been involved in the sector since 2015. So it's something that I'm very interested in and see the potential for. And really, to understand our strategy and what we do and how that might differ from other cloud companies, we partner with service providers around the world to provide a fully managed solution to them. And in doing this, we provide in-country clouds. So we often operate in markets where there are no other major public cloud providers in that particular market on the ground. And so that helps a lot with data sovereignty and things like this, which is also very interesting for a lot of blockchain solutions, and particularly private blockchain solutions, where they can keep the data within that jurisdiction, which might be a requirement legally, or just might be their preference. And so this is our network today. Let me just select the screen. And then this is our network in about 12 months. So we're really rapidly expanding. We have a particular focus on the Middle East and Africa this year. So we're really putting down a lot of locations there. We feel that both those regions are quite underserved. And again, you'll see from a lot of those locations, they're not these major hubs where you'll find a lot of public clouds. And in that way, we're actually addressing a kind of underserved markets. And that's really what we like to do. And then what's interesting is that as that network grows, it grows in strength because of the network effect. So then we become actually a global network with in-country deployment options around the world. And it becomes a very powerful solution for a lot of different independent software vendors, blockchain companies, etc. We have many blockchain companies using us because they need to diversify their deployments away from the big hyperscalers, because it's not a very decentralized network if everybody independently chooses one of the big hyperscalers and all of the nodes end up in 2-3 vendors. That's not really that decentralized. So now going back to blockchain and adoption. So I'm pretty sure that most of the people on this event would be on the left-hand side of this graph. And we're talking about innovators and visionaries and tech enthusiasts in general. But if we were to look at where are we in blockchain adoption, we have different views, I'm sure, from different people, but I would say we're more to the left than we are to the right. So there are still significant penetration and sort of adoption required to really get the mass usage of blockchain, particularly when you're talking about in the corporate world, in terms of choosing a blockchain solution to solve a problem versus a traditional solution. And I think there's a lot of work still to go there in terms of mass adoption. So the question is, how is that achieved? How can we move towards that ultimate aim? And the first thing to realize, obviously, when you see these kind of graphs, it kind of feels like, oh, it's just a natural progression. People are still using the facts out here on the laggard's tail end. There's no hope for them, but there's other people here on the left. But actually, there's a whole set of processes that take you from only the innovators and visionaries using a technology to everybody using a technology. And it's not a painless process, and it's not without effort. So here are sort of 5 factors that you could use to summarize what drives adoption of a technology, what makes it really become a mass usage product. So first one, relative advantage. So, what advantage does it offer beyond what's available today? So is there a big difference? Of course, sometimes you have something, and then also just from a pure pragmatic perspective, how visible is it? If you see a lot of people using a technology, that's going to drive and make you feel we're social animals. And the reality is, the more you see some technology out there and people using it, the more likely you are to go and use it, particularly for the people on the right hand of that curve rather than the left hand. So they have that sort of social validation. And so those things will help or hinder the adoption of blockchain. So we can think about it in those terms. And then we'll come back to cloud at the end. And just to give you an example, on the right there, you can see Twitter. So I'm sure everyone is aware of Twitter today. But if you look back then, if you go back to 2008, only 5% of the population in the US were aware of Twitter, and 1% were using it, right? And then what's kind of amazing is the way that the awareness of Twitter grew up to 92% of people in the US within 3-4 years. However, look at the adoption, much slower, right? And that's because of these things on the left here that you see. So there was this awareness, so the observability was very high, but maybe there was a requirement to change things, and some of these other factors had an impact in terms of dragging the adoption of Twitter beyond the sort of core tech enthusiast community. So if we look at blockchain, we can think of it through this lens. How do we compare? How can blockchain? What was the strength and weaknesses basically on these things? So I would say for relative advantage, yes, there is a major advantage on some use cases, right? It can offer some very, and of course, bring new solutions and that are just not possible ahead of blockchain. This idea of sort of trustless, permissionless environments, etc., at scale. So many others. So it's very interesting. So the blockchain definitely on this one clearly has already proven itself and the value it can bring. And then if you think in the context of cloud and how cloud service companies can help, I would say, they're not really bringing new solutions beyond what you could do on your own. So I don't think there's a big change there for cloud. So it's not one of the things that we're going to really impact as a service provider. Then if you look at compatibility, the blockchain normally is not compatible with the old solution. So if you have a distributed database, clearly that's a different thing to a blockchain solution, and they're not going to be interoperable. So it does require a significant amount of effort to migrate and move systems onto, or like imagine putting your supply chain on the blockchain versus a traditional solution. That's clearly not something that it's a real change of approach. And that's one of the reasons why adoption is challenging in a lot of corporate environments where they're quite risk averse or they need to make a significant investment to do that. I think the cloud can help with this because one of the things you can do is you can easily transition and migrate solutions. If you're already in the cloud, it's much easier to spin up new systems and then transition and run them in parallel. So it's one of the things that the cloud can definitely help with. On the complexity side, I think blockchain, look, ultimately we know that the concept is simple, right? But the implementation can be quite complex in reality, especially for somebody who hasn't got any experience in blockchain, and it takes time for them to kind of understand the concept and really build trust in what that technology can bring them. So I think that's another one that really is challenging for blockchain and holds back adoption. And I think for this one, the cloud is brilliant because we can provide an as-a-service model which gets rid of a lot of the operational and security challenges that people would otherwise have if they had to take on that solution themselves and set it up from scratch. So in this way, we can really evangelize cloud and through cloud evangelize blockchain solutions to a much wider audience. We can lower the barrier to entry, and I think that that's a key thing to mass adoption of blockchain. And as the panel was also discussing, potentially abstract people away totally from the understanding that they're even using a blockchain by putting value-added services that are in the cloud that happen to use blockchain underneath, but they don't even understand that necessarily. And then the other one, the other couple going to trialability. Again, I think the cloud can be really instrumental in this because if I wanted to trial something on the Ethereum blockchain, and I wanted to go and set up my own node, you know very well that apart from all the complexity we just talked about, it takes time to sync the blockchain. It's relatively large. It's only going to get bigger, not smaller, etc. So you need a decent internet connection. You need pretty significant infrastructure, etc. Right? So that creates a kind of friction if you want to try something. In the cloud, I can sign up for a shared service, and in 5 minutes, I can start experimenting with apps and different use cases of blockchain, which is really exciting because that just means it becomes a technology that anybody can just pull down off the shelf and start using. So I think the trialability is going to really help. So those core three: compatibility, complexity, in particular complexity, and trialability, those two, the cloud can really move the needle in terms of helping with mass adoption. And then in terms of observability, I think it's less relevant. It would just depend. In fact, observability of the blockchain might actually go down with some cloud solutions because the customers may not even realize they're using blockchain because they don't have to deal with administrating it. And then I think I just wanted to highlight some other challenges, I think, that hold back mass adoption and how the cloud can help. I think we're all aware of the kind of labor shortages in terms of experienced, skilled blockchain developers and operations people. That's just a reflection of the success, of course, so far of blockchain. However, it does exist. And so if you're a company looking for a solution, a traditional database, you're not going to have a problem finding people. Blockchain, much harder. So that's definitely a challenge. And then security, of course, is very uppermost and needs to be done properly and can be done very badly if you don't have, kind of comes back to point number one. And then the third thing is obviously the infrastructure requirements that might be associated. Now, if you flip that to a cloud delivery, the first thing is you can significantly reduce the requirements for blockchain. In fact, you can almost eliminate them because then you're talking about just building applications that sit on the blockchain, which becomes more of a traditional software development role. So even someone who doesn't have blockchain experience can adopt a blockchain underlying infrastructure to deploy a service without necessarily needing to reskill themselves extensively on a different technology. On the security side, total game changer for cloud because the cloud service will be maintained by the cloud service provider. So you're going to get all the patching, security, everything else. And again, as I already mentioned, the shared solutions can significantly reduce the requirement. So this is kind of where I think the cloud fits in. It's going to push the adoption curve out and accelerate that adoption through these kind of effects that we see here. By basically essentially eliminating the requirement for blockchain skills, etc. Initially for a company, for example, a regular company, to start using blockchain. And then just announcing a little bit of news. So we're working with BSN. We have been for a while, and we will be rolling out our own blockchain solutions together with BSN across the whole global network, which is going to bring those as a service solutions into lots of countries that don't have them right now available locally. So that's going to completely change the performance and obviously issues around data sovereignty, etc. So we're going to start with the Hyperledger and Ethereum dedicated environments, and then we'll be bringing out shared environments as well. So this is all going to happen in the next quarter or so. And then finally, we'll look to expand out into other blockchains as well. So we're going to have, I think that, ultimately we'll have the kind of 14 blockchains that are supported by BSN, which will be the largest, I think, on a public cloud. So that's really exciting for us. I'm really interested, and we have a lot of partners very interested with that. And ultimately, the way I see cloud is it's going to bring blockchain and this is the blockchain as a black hole. So I think that it's going to continue to suck in more and more use cases, and the cloud just has its role to play in that. And I'm very excited for what we can do to bring more people to blockchain technologies. So thanks for your time today. Feel free to email me, robert@cloudsigma.com, if you have any questions or you want to try the blockchain solutions with us, or you can just go to our website. And I hope you have a great show. Thank you.